Right guys, good morning. Um, Having a bit of a easy morning here. Gonna probably do some tracks in the new build, but the point of this video is just answering a few more questions. Find it easier to answer them, just make a wee quick video, answer a few questions. Again, some about SBR and stuff, and I'll have to go through the phone to find them. But yeah, got that wee job finished off that I prepped previous. Just had to skim a few walls then as well and render inside where I did the beads and do a lot of patching. Just loads of patching. But yeah, that's out of the way, so I'll have a bit more time to hopefully make some really good quality videos on the channel going forward now. So yeah, Fox or F Cox 16 wrote, apologies for what I might be a silly question, but does it matter what brand of SBR I use, or do all pretty much do the same job? I've used quite a lot of SBRs, and I find that most of them are pretty much the same. But again, I maybe only use 2 or 3 different brands. So the answer to that is probably most of them are the same. But definitely read the back of them, just make sure. I had another comment recently, and the guy was saying you shouldn't mix PVA with cement because it'll all crumble and turn to dust. But I don't know what PVA or what his mix was, but he made a mistake somewhere on the mix if it turned to dust. Because the PVAs that I know, you can mix them in your sand and cement and it will make them stronger and it will make them stick better. And again, you can paint heads with it, you can paint walls and re-skim over it. You can paint, if you're doing internal stuff, you can paint over a wall and scratch it and float it and skim it, and it will be solid. Obviously, as long as there's no damp. But damp's bad. Even if you're going to SBR wall and you have damp, it's still damp's just damp's damp. It's not good. So the answer to that is read the back. And for the likes of that comment that I got, the guy was so convinced and even thought that Google would tell him that a quick search on Google would tell you that you can't do it, but that's completely wrong. So super PVA Evo stick, you can make that into your scud coat and scud away. It'll be rock solid. So again, like I say, if you read the back, all the info's there. And if it's not on the back of that tub, you should be able to go online and find even more specs for it. So definitely read the back of any products you're going to use and how you're going to use them. So back to Pickajoule, he appreciated the previous video. So we had 2 more questions as well. Do you leave scud coat to completely dry out before you apply scratch coat over it? On the most I do. Like a good 98% of the times I do. If it's something heavy and I feel that I need to get another coat on to help me for like another coat. So if like there's bricks all missing and you're scudding it, I'll typically will fill in them hollows. But as long as it stiffens up, you can do a scratch over the same day. But in my 100% honest opinion, you're better to leave it a day and then scratch it the next day or 2 so that it's more cured and it'll add strength that way. As things drying out a wee bit better, it will add more strengths to it. So second question he had was, have you ever done the painted with Portland primer old bonding method? I think he said Mike Haddock does it. So I think what he means there is just mixing it up and painting it on the brush. I think I've done it maybe twice. The reason I've only done it twice is probably just didn't have a dash and trowel with me. and it is a good method. I find it destroys the brush. The brush almost like bonding. Leave a brush to bond. It kind of like swells up the brush, and I don't think it's great for that. Again, I find splatter coat is better grip than the brush, and it's quicker. I find it much quicker. Maybe a bit more messy, but it is quicker. Secondly, if you only have the brush and you have plenty of SBR, you could just paint the wall you're going to do with pure SBR, neat, pure SBR. Again, like I said previously, read the instructions, make sure it's all going to work, but most SBRs this will work. And you can put a wee taste in your mix as well, and just scratch over the whole wall and give it a scratch, and that'll be your key. Reminds me of Rendate. Don't know if anybody here remembers Rendate. I haven't seen it in a while, but used to be able to mix it up like skim and just apply that straight over your brick or your block, whatever you thought was needed a bit more key or steel heads. Believe it or not, you could scrape it on and scratch it, and that was your scud coat, your bond. That's your adhesive coat. That's gonna build up on previous next coats. So then Shadow Bandit has asked, what about bonding slurry coat lashed on with the brush? So I kind of already answered that question. Again, yes, it will work. I do believe it'll probably destroy your brush. It gets very heavy in the brush. Leaves a good enough key, 100%. Depends what you're doing. Like sometimes, like if you're going to do a reveal and you want to be neat and tidy, that could be a good way. Just brush it up the reveal, or jab it, give it a wee stab up and down the reveal. It means you don't need to cover up the window maybe, and just depends on the job you're doing. I do remember a guy primed a wall for me before, and honestly, he was painting this brick wall. It was in a shop. He was painting this brick wall with this slurry coat that I made him up, and this brush was destroyed. Took him about an hour and a half, and by that stage I'd already like floated out 2 walls. He wanted to do it. It wasn't his job, but he was the foreman or something, but kind of was a waste of time in my opinion, because I could have just scudded it much quicker. But I think he was trying to help out, so sometimes let people help. So can I ask a question? Absolutely. When you are plastering a wall, just an outside wall, I want to scud it, and I also want to scratch it, and then I'm going to give it a layer of plaster. Okay. So it sounds like you have a good idea of what you're doing. So 1, do I scratch the entire wall, but not scratch the plinth, the bottom, the plaster, remove the lower bottom, job done. Depends what you're doing. I think I did try to answer this as well. Then he wrote, do I scratch the entire wall, put the bottom on, and then plaster the top half, finish plaster, remove the bottom, and then the plaster the plinth at the bottom, right where it was scratched. Number 2 is typically the way we'd normally go. Obviously, there's 2 different kinds of plinths or bases. I tend to call them base. One where the wall sits out at the top heavy, and then another one where the base comes up over the top. And most times I put a wee bevel cut on them just to allow the water, forces the water away. So sort of read up. That was just a lot. I've got a lot of comments on that video alone, and I kind of wanted to just fire through them. Again, on that one with the base, there's lots of videos on the channel where I'm doing the plinth cuts and stuff. Do plan on doing more. The house that I'm building will have that type of will have a heavy base on it, but like I said, typically I'd scratch the whole wall. I know some people will put a batten on, scratch the batten, take the batten off, and scratch up to that. But and again, it's all, some people say you're breaching the DPC, but technically the joint where the DPC is going to be roughly where your base is. You know, you're not going to breach it, in my opinion. So you may as well just scratch the whole wall. If you really think you're going to breach the DPC, you can leave that wee tiny gap out. All that really allows, it will allow any water trapped inside. Depends on the DPC. In the house that we're building, it has a step DPC, so on the inside the DP starts here, and on the outside it ends here, and that just means that technically any water was to breach in is forced out. So technically I should probably put the base on the lower part, so that's the joint of the plasters and stuff. But I'm hoping when I'm doing acrylic, this is leading me to another question, but believe it or not, might take me a wee second to dig it out, but hopefully the acrylic will never let any water through, and it's supposed to be breathable and permeable, more than breathable, because I think to breathe you must have lungs. So I think the word is permeable. And again, I've seen a lot of stuff recently on permeable, where, you know, there's no actual measurement to permeable. So a lot of products can say they're permeable and they're not really permeable. You know, when you're talking about lime, very permeable, and then, you know, people saying cement's on the side of the scale where it's not permeable, even though there's lots of additives you're putting in, waterproofers and motor mixers all say that it'll permeable. And what permeable just means is that air can come through, but water can't. Water will do this. So, but then what a lot of people tend to think is that water vapor will get through, turn to water, and then it can't get back through. Why it won't then turn to water vapor again all of a sudden and come through is a mystery as well. You need a lot of heat to dry up some walls. I getting on a crazy one here, talking about thick walls that water will come through, and then the heat of the house is supposed to dry it out. Take a lot of heat for a long time. A good dry house that would need to be. But I'm going to go here and dig out this question about acrylics, and I'm going to try my best to answer it. It's not going to be easy. So I dug out the question again, and it's Picajewel again, and oh, I've just nearly deleted it there. So he asked, can someone explain the difference between acrylic, silicone, mineral renders? Thanks. So acrylic and silicone, I'm sort of really bad at this, because I tend to call them all acrylic, and it was because the very first time I used the thin coat stuff, it said acrylic on the actual tub. To me, between the thin coats acrylic and silicone, there's very, very little difference. I do think one's a wee bit more flexible. Again, I think the silicone based one that has more silicone in it is a bit more flexible, and it tends to be more expensive. But on the buckets that I was using on that particular video that he asked that question, it says acrylic and silicone on the bucket, so it's very, very confusing to know the difference. So I'm not sure if that means that the dye in it is acrylic, and, you know, again, a lot of it was in a different language, so couldn't actually read. I think it was Italian or something. But it was very, very good stuff, brilliant stuff. So to me, the acrylic and the silicone, there's just two different forms. I think the silicone one's the more expensive one, and acrylic, I've done them pillars, they're over the top of old paint, and it's you know, it hasn't all just flaked off after, it could be 3 years ago. I'm not sure. I'd have to dig across the channel where I did a test on the pillars. Anybody else wants to go and have a look, you're more than welcome. I'm just looking at them now, and, you know, they're still solid. Anytime I touch them, they're still solid. Done a few tests around this old house here, with SBR and sand cement, painting it on and cutting it over, and I've left it years and it's been solid. This is from my own references going forward, doing jobs for other people, And again, for the likes of yourselves asking questions, if I don't do these tests and I can't constantly check up on the work, I'll just never know if it worked or not. Unless you got a call and said something's failed. But again, I wouldn't want to be testing things on people's houses. I want to do stuff that I know, so that's why I do test on my own house. So that's how I know how good SBR is, because the stuff I've done, I have SBR over the top of painted render, and it has been solid. I know for a fact how good it is and stuff then, and again with it in the mix. So back sort of that question, because I get this one a lot, not so much from that particular commenter, but I asked the difference. People always ask, say they want K-rand, and the problem with these products is people call monocouche, that's the ripped you rip off the surface. People call that K-rand, but that's where it gets very confusing, because there's a thin coat K-rand as well. They do the acrylic and the silicone thin coats. They also do the monocouche, where you see it quite often. You see it spread on jobs. This kind of reminds me of a funny sort of thing. So quite often you see it's pumped on, sprayed on, and people do it all the same day and rip it off and stuff. But that actually has silicone in it as well. So you can see how things get very confusing, even, not so much even for the customer, but for the plasterer trying to understand what it is that the customer's asking the price. Because if you're pricing something off plans or pictures and they're saying they want this, it's hard to, it's not just, is it a smooth render you want? No, it's a K-rand. So sometimes it's hard because K-rand's just a make. K-rand do all them other types of renders. Same as Weber. Weber's a make, but Weber do acrylic thin coat and silicone thin coat, and then they also do the monocouche. Monocouche is the scratched off render. So it's kind of hard to understand these things for the customer and for the plasterer trying to decipher it. So it kind of would be good if we all get together and decided, let's just call this that and that, but it's never going to happen. All plasterers have their own techniques, their own ideas, and again, the brands would all need to come together and just make it more simple. Maybe just call it thin coat on the buckets, start calling it thin coat, or silicone and acrylic thin coat, and then call the other stuff should always just say monocouche. I think a lot of it does actually say monocouche on the bags and stuff, but not right on the front half the time. Normally it's got a weird name or a weird colour. Again, on the colour as well. Colour's another hard topic on when you're picking stuff. Again, maybe just let the customer pick them if you don't want any accents, or bring the customer with you before you decide to just go ahead and purchase all the material. But yeah, sort of, it's hard to get your bearings with that, but to me that is, this camera's playing up, but to me that's the differences. Wee birds flying about everywhere here, but that's the difference. Is what one would probably be, if you're just talking about the thin coat and you want to know the difference between the acrylic and the silicone, one's probably just more acrylic based and the other one's more silicone based. The other one, I think you're asking there, of a mineral render, I think that's going down. That's the newer stuff. I haven't looked massively into that. I think that's meant to be more, it's going to be more eco-friendly. Again, it's only really new out. Supposed to be getting samples sent out to me by a company doing these types of renders, so I'll know more about that hopefully in the coming weeks. I was hoping it would maybe be here before the start of this working week, because I don't have much time during the week. As you see, I'm exhausted now. So once I get that and give a couple of tests and stuff, I'll know more about it. But to me, if it's a mineral, it's just, everything's technically a mineral, like sands. You break everything down into its wee components. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to answer that a bit more in these mineral renders. You know, and getting a lot of sort of natural stuff, cork renders and things. But again, not sure what way that's going to lie with damp issues and breathability and all a lot of it. So hopefully I'll be able to answer that in more detail in the coming weeks.
What we doing live? Echoes in eternity.